Maybe. 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 Aha! Ah! You're here. You're here. I wish that I could somehow see you guys while this was going on. I can't see who's actually in here to see if Rose Betty is in here yet. Can I see in some way, shape, or form? Who's here? Rose Betty, are you here? Ah, Joyce is here. Does it? It doesn't say. Oh, participants. Oh. Well, it says who's participated in the chat, but not who is actually watching. So how do I know that? How do I know? You can see my massive experience with YouTube is showing. Comp chat, live chat, this chat, that chat. Oh, there's a thumb. I can't even tell who thumbs up me either. Does it give you an option to thumbs down me? Because that would be hilarious. All right, I'm just gonna assume. I'm gonna assume that she's over here. Maybe, no. Does it let you thumbs down me? That would be so funny. I don't know. So she was asking or commenting in general about, for those of you that were not a part of the other chat who were just watching it because it's up on the channel now, we went through the whole like introductory thing, and towards the end we were talking about social anxiety and kind of feeling like you can't get through particular aspects maybe of school or work because of that. And I had meant to start off an introductory thing with kind of like, this is my life experience, so this is how I got through everything. But I didn't do it mostly because when we started that other one, I was like rapid fire getting questions immediately. So I didn't really talk much in terms of myself. But in my seminar over Summer B, at the very last class, I was working with a student on her resume because I'm obsessive about getting you guys resumes that are actually good, that make you stand out amongst the graduating class at FIU. And instead of us really working on our resumes, she, like, as soon as everybody left, she just kind of broke down. And she just like confided a whole lot of stuff to me. And one of those things was that she was terrified that she was not going to be able, she was terrified that she wasn't going to be able to hold down a career, not necessarily in psychology in specific, but just in general, because of her level of anxiety. And I had shared with that class many times my own anxieties and whatnot. So I guess that's why she felt like she could talk to me about it. But in particular, so do you actually want to know? The story? I don't know. We went from 8 to 6. So every time we drop, I feel a little sad inside. But so I was always a very nervous child. And I think most people with anxiety can identify with that, with at a very young age, having this manifestation of just this unsettled feeling. So on my way to school, even when I was in elementary school, my mom would have to stop me. We would run into the same Burger King. I would run into the bathroom. I'd be sick to my stomach. And, once I made it to school, it was usually okay, because I was always, a kid who was really obsessed with school, and that's where my zen was. But it was like a never ending thing. Like, that nervousness never went away. And then we all know that as we get older and you move into like the teenage years and the middle school years and whatnot, life just gets all the more brutal, because people become more brutal and less innocent, and bullying and stuff like that becomes so much more prominent. So in middle school, I had my very first crush, was about to turn 13. My little headbanger crush with the guy with the really big jeans, which I don't even know if anybody wears those anymore. But he and his friends became really abusive. I guess they saw me kind of as a weak target, as somebody who would take that kind of abuse without doing anything back. And that's exactly what happened. And it got to the point where I would get to school every day, and we're still talking that, I'm the kind of kid that on the way to school, I was not doing well as it was. And they would follow me around. They would corner me as a group. They would talk to me about how I should go kill myself, how I was worthless, how I was never going to amount to anything, like anything you can think of somebody saying to demoralize you and to kind of like take away your sense of self, was what these people did on a day-to-day basis. And three-way calling was a really big thing back then. And they would call my house, and they would kind of just like gang up on me in any which way that they could. And it got to the point where I didn't know this at the time, but I was having panic attacks going to school. And I would go to the office. I would really not have any good way to describe what the physical symptoms were. And I would end up on the floor in the office, in the bathroom, just like praying for some sort of end to what was going on. And so at first they'd pull me out of school, and I'd stay at home for a week or two. Maybe it's the flu, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. She'll be able to go back. She'll be fine. And we're talking, I still am a competitive bowler, but I did it when I was younger. I was in chorus. I played sports. I was a dancer. I was a gymnast. I was part of the FIU engineering and like robotics team at 12 years old. Everything came easy to me, I guess, in that sort of sense. I was good at that stuff. And it all slowly got taken away from me. So they'd send me back to school after they thought I'd be better from the flu or whatever it was that they thought that I had. And I wasn't. It kept happening over and over and over again, because the same problem was always there. And I got put into a homeschool program, because you can only miss so much class before something's got to happen. They didn't have online classes then. And it's a remedial program where they call you over the phone, and you have classes over the phone with the teacher and other students and whatnot. And just little by little, so I assume you guys are in here because of, having this anxiety problem. It becomes like a web, and it branches out from one thing to some sort of other thing that's in some way associated with it. Like, okay, I can't go sing in chorus because it's related to school, so now I can't do that. I can't go to my league because there's people from my class in it, which is associated to this, so I can't do that. And the association built itself so far out that it became this web that prevented me from doing anything. I couldn't touch the front doorknob without having this massive panic attack. I couldn't go out and check the mail. I couldn't answer the phone. Internet was really a relatively new thing. I couldn't use instant messenger. I couldn't do anything. Even talking on the phone to do the schooling stuff was really difficult. So at some point, I still don't know how, at some point I decided that I was going to move on I was going to take control over my life, and yeah, I was going to take control of it, and I was going to do something. So I'm officially a high school dropout. I'm a year away from being a PhD student, but I'm officially a high school dropout. I got a GED. I went to FIU at 17, and I tried to immerse myself in stuff that was going to be more positive. And it was great. It was great for the first few years, and being able to drive and being more independent was very helpful. But I started getting involved in a lot of extracurricular activities, because you learn as a psych student, especially around this time for you guys, that the extracurricular stuff, like the clubs and the organizations and all of those sorts of things, are very important in terms of being able to get into grad school at some point. You need to show that you have this ability to associate with other people. And I would get into these groups and find that I was always in the same position in the group, the person that nobody wanted to talk to, because I could not socialize the same way. I wasn't the kind of person that could wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, go to class all day, do something all night, and then be ready to go out to dinner with a group of people at 9 o'clock, and then wake up again the next day at 6 o'clock and do it over again. When you have anxiety, you kind of have to pre-plan out all of the things that you're going to do in order to manage your resources, which is like your sanity, in a way that you can actually get everything done. And if you're like you guys are, I assume, where you're trying to get into grad school at some point and have these good grades and everything, it's very hard to relate to a lot of people. And it's very hard to find people on campus that you can relate to in that way. So when I went and did my master's degree, I had a couple of jobs. I did a master's degree in business, so my jobs were predominantly in the business field. And I got fired from 2 of them. And I was a more productive, more intelligent, more capable worker than some of the people that were there. And I do not say that out of any self-centeredness. It was just like I was more trained to be in that position than anyone else in there. And I could do the work twice as fast, but I would miss days, because there's days when you wake up and whether it's depression or anxiety or anything that deals with your ability to have, a clear head and to focus on something, like there's just some days you can't do it. And it's very hard for people to understand that it's a legitimate, tangible thing. When you are severely depressed, your body is severely depressed. You feel like you have a flu, your stomach is upset, your head's not clear, you're in a fog. Like everything takes so much more effort than it would if you were not in that place. Same thing with anxiety. I mean, your stomach upset, you develop ulcers, the stress levels in your body reach such a high point that getting out of bed is really hard. And especially now, I don't know if you guys are technically considered to be millennials, but I don't think it really matters. I think it's like anything millennial and newer. They think of us as being these generations that are just like little pansies and we don't know how to handle anything. And it's really not the case, because we handle 10 times more than anybody before us did. We have to balance, extremely high living costs with student loans, with worrying about finding a job in an oversaturated market and keeping that job in an oversaturated market, and not having health insurance provided to us, and a lot of different things that just make it really hard to survive, even if you don't have anxiety and depression. So I continued into academics. I knew that I wanted to do academics to begin with, don't get me wrong, but getting fired from these jobs. And one of the jobs was a career where it was in scheduling, it was in staffing at a home healthcare place. And the technology that you needed to do the job was something that you could do from anywhere. It was a computer system where all you needed was a phone and a computer and internet access, and that's it. And you could schedule anybody from anywhere and it wouldn't have mattered. And a lot of the scheduling that you needed to do was actually something that could benefit from being done after the 9 to 5 sort of thing. And they wanted no part of it. What? You need to stay at home because of this, and you can do the work from home, but no, we're not letting you, because everybody is conditioned to believe that unless your butt is in a chair in a particular location, you're not capable of doing something. And unfortunately, I don't see that changing anytime soon. But it's wrong, because there are so many of us that do have depression or are anxious, who are so capable and so much in desire to show that we are capable of doing these things. Also, for somebody to give us that chance where we would jump on it and be the best, most loyal employees, right? But you don't get that chance, because unless you're physically capable of sitting in that seat and doing the 9 to 5, you're not a good person. You're not a good worker. You're not a productive student. And a lot of, if you're going into grad school, you're going to face those same things in terms of your coursework and research and stuff like that when you become a graduate student. Because take the way things are in undergrad, if you wanted to miss a class or not wanted, but needed to miss a class because you had a major depressive episode, it was one of those days where you would rather die than roll out of bed. And you know that your professor is going to give you an F on whatever thing because you're not showing up. Take that and amplify it by 1,000, and that's what graduate school is going to be like. So I actually got forced to register for the Disability Services Center when I was in my first or second year of my PhD at FIU. And for those of you who are watching this now or will watch this later, and who suffer from any kind of like anxiety, depression, bipolar, anything in this spectrum, even if you suspect that you might have you might be on the lower end of the autism spectrum, anything, go in and talk to them, because they have a lot of allowances and a lot of sway on campus that not a lot of people do. So they can assess, okay, you have anxiety, so it should be an allowance for you to miss extra classes or to take exams inside of the actual center, or to have extra time on exams because you might be dealing with some anxiety in the middle of, taking these tests or whatnot. And sometimes you'll find that just having them behind you and knowing that if somebody tries, like a professor or whatever, tries to come at you because of something that you can't control, they'll be behind you, making sure that you can't be failed because you're depressed or anxious, and you can't, miss out on certain opportunities because of that. So definitely look into it. All it takes is you seeing like a general doctor or a psychologist, which you can see on campus. You can go to CAPS on campus and get them to write this up for you. And you literally go in and they sit with you. They have different counselors based on your last name. That's their system. And they'll sit with you and decide what your allowances should be. And sometimes just having them there makes you feel better and less anxious and able to kind of like do better in classes. Because I have students sometimes that they'll have straight A's throughout the entire semester, and then they'll just suddenly miss the final. And that to me is not okay. I'm the kind of person that reaches out to them and is like, hey, why did you miss the final? Why didn't you talk to me about it? And sometimes it'll be, hey, I had a bad day and I slept through it. And it's like, all right, let's have a conversation about that so that we can get you into the final so you don't fail this class because you were depressed, or, you took anxiety medication and it made you sleepy and whatnot. So in my graduate career, I started, I'm glad it's helpful to some of you, because some people are probably going to watch this and be like, what is this? What is she talking about? It's crazy peoples. But When you get into a grad program, if you do plan to go into a PhD, you're going to be on an assistantship for the first like 4 years, maybe 5 years of the program. For master's degrees, they don't tend to do that, but for PhDs, they do, because they want you to survive those first amount of years. And so they'll put you in some sort of assistantship. Sometimes it'll be in an office where, like, the advisors that you'll see in DM right now, some of them are graduate students who are just in there for their 20 hours to do their assistantship thing. Sometimes they put you in a research thing, and sometimes they put you as a teaching assistant, which is what they did with me. And I talked to them about the allowances that the disability services had provided, and they gave me an online teaching assistantship position. And it was not in my field. It was in cognitive psychology, which is how I ended up being a hybrid student. So it was great, because when you teach online, or even when you're a TA online, you can do things on your own time. You can do it. I always tell my students, I do everything within the confines of my pillow fort. I didn't think it would be professional to do, YouTube things from the confines of my pillow fort in bed, but there are certain safe places that we have where we do our best work. So when you teach online, you can do that. You don't have somebody allowances. When I'm saying allowances, I mean, so they have like a rubric in the Disability Services Center of how severe your needs are and what you're going to need back from like the professor or from the disability services office. So like the babyest ones are like, they'll give you an extra time. They'll give you time and a half. So if an exam was 60 minutes, they'll give you 90 minutes. Some of them are allowances for absences. So if you suffer from something that makes it harder for you to get to campus and to be in class, they cannot punish you or give you a lesser grade for being absent. If you have that allowance, those are no, I don't have the time one, but I have that. And then they have some where you take the test in the Disability Services Center as opposed to the classroom. And it goes on and on. I mean, the more severe your disability, the more more accommodating they are. So if you have a physical disability and you can't get into the room for whatever like reason, such on and such and such and such and such. So for mental health related issues, the majority of the time it's going to be the absences one, the extra time in the test one, or taking the test in the actual office. Because the time that's been the most helpful for me is there's actually something called comprehensive exams that you do when you're a PhD student. And most of the time professors are like watching you, and you do it in the department. And I was able to take that in the actual Disability Services Center. So it was very, very helpful. But so I was a TA in these online classes for, I want to say like 3 years. And after a certain point, they will give you your own courses. So I was teaching my own memory course online, which was great, because you actually kind of get paid for it, as opposed to when you're a graduate assistant and you're just on their dime. And then one semester they said, oh, we would like you to come in and teach this class in person. And I was like, that's lovely. This is going to be great. Okay. And the cap on the class was like 60 students. And then a few days before the class started, I went into PantherSoft and looked, and the cap on the class was 160 students. So I was in GL 101, my very first time teaching in a subject area that was not my main area. Cognition and IO are very different, in front of 160 people in an auditorium. And they're like, don't worry, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. So I taught the first class. It was okay. I got into the second class, which was all about the biology of the brain. And a few minutes into the lecture, I froze and I had a panic attack. The first panic attack I think I'd ever had on the actual FIU campus. And I had to stop. I looked at my students and I said, I'm having a panic attack right now, and we're going to have to end class early. And I said, I really can't beat myself up too much, because there was a point in my life where I couldn't even walk out my front door. And I'm teaching now in front of 160 people. So I maybe need to give myself a little credit somewhere. And they actually started applauding. And I got emails from a lot of them who were thankful that somebody in a position that they respected was willing to admit that they had problems, just like anybody else. And that taught me so much, more than anything could have ever taught me, and solidified this idea that teaching is a really good field, especially for like my combination of problems. But it's so possible for you to go into any one of these fields that you're interested in and balance out this anxiety or depression or whatever it is that you have with all of the skills that you have, and be successful in that career. It's about kind of like doing the extra research and figuring out what exactly it is that you want to do and what are the options within the scope of that. Because even if you wanted to go into mental health counseling, I don't know if you've seen the commercials, but they're everywhere. There's actually online counselors now where, yes, you need the degree, you need the accreditation to be a counselor, but they do it through text, through like FaceTime type stuff, through all of these different technological things. Some is just like literally typing, where you never actually have any face-to-face interaction with this person, but you are a therapist and you work with them from home. You don't have to go anywhere. And you can be a therapist and they pay for it like it's therapy. So you can still help people, but in some way, shape, or form, take care of yourself in that process. And the advice that I gave that one student who, was kind of worried that because she had ever been diagnosed with something, she wouldn't be allowed to be, a psychologist, was it's all about knowing your boundaries and what you're able to take and stay sane as a person. Because first and foremost, you need to be okay, especially in the field of psychology. You're not going to be able to help anyone else until you find some sense of okayness in and of yourself. Primary objective. So for me, I wanted to be that adolescent phobia psychologist, to work with everybody. But I came to a point where I had to make that decision of that fork in the road of what I wanted to do. And I knew that if I listened to those stories on a day-to-day basis, that it would be easy for me to help them, but at the same time, I'd be giving too much of myself to them that I wouldn't be okay anymore. And that would only last for so long before I would relapse into not being able to walk out my front door again. And the amount of help that I could provide did not balance out with the amount of myself that I would lose in the process. So when you're thinking about this and you're trying to come up with what career can I have where I balance out, what I want to do with what is it going to take back from me? You have to think about those things, because some people, they could go in and they could work with those kids with the phobias, and listening to those kids and helping them could have the opposite effect on that other person, where it somehow invigorates them and it makes them better and it solidifies in them that they're not going to feel like that again. But it's about that, awareness of how is it going to affect you? And there are simple ways that you can go about figuring that out. So if you are somebody who wants to go into mental health counseling for a particular thing, try getting, I do this all the time with like family, try, having people you're close to, like friends, family, whatever, confiding in you about something, or talking to you about something that's really stressful, or something that might have triggered you in your depressive or anxious state or whatever, and see how it feels just to sit there and listen to it. Does it make you anxious to listen to it? Does it make you do? Yeah, I'll answer questions on here for sure. This is just so that the people that were probably tired of listening to the other one didn't have to come and listen to more stuff. But do that, especially if you want to go into counseling sort of things, or even if you wanted to go into like child related thing, get like a niece or a nephew or something, and like try to put into actual practice what you might do and see how it makes you feel. Because if talking to a friend about something really stressful makes you in some way feel slightly triggered, like you need to take a step back after you have that conversation with them to center yourself, it's going to just get way worse if you're doing it with people all day long. Karuna, is that how you would pronounce your name? What is your question? I wish I could see you guys. You could actually talk back to me. Just pause. Just pause 1 minute. 1 minute. Should I start showing you the little things that are on my desk? I have bobble-headed Bob Ross. All right. Max. Yes, happy birthday to HQ. I realized after I picked the time for this that it was right in the middle of all of the HQ stuff. So I made it to question 8 on the first one. And then I picked Bugle Boy. And I lost it. I've never won HQ yet. Now I want to know where the little thumbs up button is. I want to thumbs up myself. Since you 6 are my little sorry, I sit on my legs. It's probably not the best of posture decisions, but then my leg goes asleep and I have to change and I have to sit on the other leg. My diehard, my 6 of you that are in here, do you think that these things will actually be helpful to like have this stuff live on YouTube and whatnot? Or is it like a very silly idea? I haven't decided yet in my head. It seemed like a good idea in theory, but I don't know if it's just boring. I hope that they can see the comments when they watch this later. How did I manage school? Wait. Okay, we'll give Karuna a time to. How did I manage school and dealing? Anthony, are you my senior seminar, Anthony? Oh, you've all been in class with me before. Oh, yay. I feel like Karuna has more to her question. So for Joyce, managing school and dealing with anxiety. I feel like the answer to this question is probably not the the best way to answer this as a faculty to a student, but I have a friend who she is one of those happy people that never worries about anything. She has this natural high at all times. And her philosophy to me has always been fake it until you make it. She tells me that about everything. Stop stressing, just fake it until you make it. And at a certain point, I think in grad school, there was a philosophy that I had to adopt. But other than that, I did like the typical things of writing out to-do lists and when things were due and, whatnot. But it's a lot more in grad school, I think, about getting by and trying to be flexible. They want you to be in the department a lot, and I definitely wasn't like that. If you were to ask me what I would do different now so that I could manage, studying and school a little bit better, I think communicating with professors would be up there, because you try to handle it without letting anybody know what you're going through. And it's hard. It's hard to do it without having any sort of allies. But trying to have allies can go wrong. I got into the management program at UF, and I went straight from undergrad up into UF into that program. And we were in a cohort where you took all the same classes with all the same people, and you saw them every day of the week, and there was just no getting out of it. You couldn't hide anywhere or anything like that. You were going to work with these people. And I tried to talk to them about my anxiety and where I came from and why I might not be at all the group meetings sometimes and stuff like that. And they actually reported me to the department and sent police out to my house because they said that they felt I was suicidal and needed to be watched. And I almost got kicked out of my program. So you have to be very careful about how you market yourself sometimes, because people who don't understand are not going to be the most forgiving in that particular area. I'm scared of things. I can walk into a classroom and be fine, but for me to get a job or go to interviews, I get so scared that I create excuses why I can't go. The main reason is because I'm like, don't feel that way, Karuna. Like, don't feel that way. So I had a job interview, it was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I had just gotten back from a trip. I went to Chicago to play Pokemon Go. Don't judge me. Don't judge me. I'm not judging you, so don't judge me. But I had my very first plane panic attack, and it was the worst. If you remember this, then you were in my class when I went over it. But it was not fun whatsoever. And I had a job interview at Miami-Dade Wolfson. I did catch good things. I had a job at Miami-Dade job interview at Wolfson the next week, I want to say, if not like that Monday when I got back. And downtown is a trigger for my anxiety. So making a little list to yourself of where your triggers are and how to avoid them, whether it's anxiety, depression, anything like that, is helpful, because you cannot be, I did tie my hair. Yes, Nunez, you should have graduated by now. Jesus, what are you doing? And I got all the way downtown and told myself I was going to turn around when I parked. And then I made myself get out of the car. And I walked out of the car and then told myself I was going to turn around and run back to the car. I got into the building, and in the elevator, I told myself I was going to turn around and run and go home. And then I got up into the actual room and I told myself I was going to run around and go home because I didn't see anybody up there. And up until like the last second of walking into the room for the panel interview, I told myself I was leaving and there was no job that was going to be worth the level of anxiety that I was currently feeling. And once I got into the interview, I think it got a little bit better. And part of it is because interviews are something that I consider myself to be an expert at. All this professional development sort of stuff. I may not look like it, but it's something that I'm actually decent at. So if you're feeling nervous specifically about the interview thing, then I know that, do your career assignment, your professional development assignment with Career Services, do it and do a mock interview. Do them enough to where you get these kind of little things that you're nervous about out of your system, so that you become so much more confident in the other aspects of the interview that you're not as worried about your like eye movement or anything else that you're doing, because you're much more focused on how you're really, really good at answering these questions on your feet and stuff like that. So make the other aspects of the interview, I don't want to say what I really want to say, but make them your area of expertise. That's my student professionals. Yeah, that's what I mean too with professionals. Like, the more you practice, those mock interviews are so helpful, because you're Mr. Nunez, you're on here because you're on my Facebook. The mock interviews are usually going to be with people that you don't want a career with. They're just not. They're usually going to be like some banking industry that's super desperate to hire somebody, or like a financial services industry that wants somebody in their pyramid scheme or whatever. So they're going to be somebody that you have like zero actual care about seeing again. And it's going to reduce that level of, oh my God, I need to impress them. I need to impress them. I need to impress them. And you can focus more on just how you're answering the questions, because whether or not they're in financial services, or they're a psych person, or they're a grad school interviewing you, the kinds of questions are always going to be similar. They're going to ask you situational, behavioral questions, or what your plan in life is and stuff like that. And if you can get the answers down and you can get used to having a stranger ask that to you, I think that you'll feel a lot more confident when you get into the real thing, because then you won't be worried about, okay, am I going to blink too much? Am I going to do this too much? Whatever, on top of how am I going to answer this question? I don't know what they're going to ask me. I don't feel very experienced answering questions. And on top of that, I'm scared that they're going to be freaked out by my blinking, which most of the time they're not going to pay attention to that at all anyways. But say they do. They're going to be so impressed with your answers. They're not going to care. What else is on here? Grading on my people watching live time, but the price for Twitter. Thanks, John. Thanks, Anthony. Okay. Are minors important? Are minors important? It is important not to be with minors because it's illegal. No. I did minors, and I don't think that it really mattered for anything. I think it would depend on what you were going into. But other than that, I don't really think that they do. It's just a way for you to capitalize on the extra credits that you're going to have to take to get out of school. And I would only minor in something if you were considering doing it as a graduate degree. Because what most people don't realize is that when you graduate with your bachelor's degree, you can go into a master's program that's not in the same thing as your bachelor's degree. So for your bio and art example, like you could major in bio and do your minor in art, and then you can go do a master's in art without having a master's degree or without having a bachelor's degree in art. It's going to be a little bit harder to do it the other way around if you were to minor in bio and then master's in bio, just because the science background is kind of a requirement there. But if you're in a field that's somewhat relative, I mean, we're looking at art therapy and behavior analysis. Actually, one of my very good friends is an art therapist who is the chief, or what do they call it, artist in residence at Boston Children's Hospital. And it looks like the coolest job on the face of the planet. I am not going to lie. I am very jealous because all she does is like post pictures of all the art projects she does with the kids. I'm like, this is life. Why did I not think of this sooner? So it's actually something that you can find a pretty good job in. and in a variety of areas. Write me an email, Michelle. I'll put you in contact with my friend and she can lend you some information on how she got involved in it and whatnot. She's not in Florida now, but she was before. So, I mean, she did all of her degrees prior to being up there in Florida. So maybe she'll have some ideas. I had another student who wanted to do music therapy, and this kind of alternate therapy stuff is actually becoming relatively popular. And especially with like the populations that are on the ends of the bell curve, so like children and the elderly populations, working in those sorts of things. Art therapy. You'll never work a day in your life. You can actually work at like Miami Children's Museum has artists in residence and stuff like that if you want to work in those types of fields. It's really cool. It's really cool, but I imagine that it's difficult to get a job in, but once you do, you're kind of set for a while. There's only 5 of you, and this is already, again, at 45 more minutes. So I'm going to go get dinner now. But if you guys ever have questions, and specifically like anybody who has questions related to the anxiety type of things and how to get through it, I'm actually working right now with Disability Services Center, potentially the psychological services on campus and student government even, on coming up with an initiative that I have a tentative name for it. To me, I call it the Faculty Student Mental Health Alliance, but I'm sure I'll come up with a better name at some point for it. But specifically to work with, in one way, pairing faculty that have these problems with students in some sort of mentorship way to help students get through their degree and feel like there is a light at the end of the tunnel if they deal with these things, but mostly just to create an awareness so that professors become more accepting of things like somebody having to take a mental health day, or, you know, not putting so much pressure on somebody for like having a panic attack and having to miss class or whatnot, making it a legitimate thing where, you know, in the syllabus where it's right there that says you have a doctor's note and you can miss class and you can make things up for whatever. Like, you should be able to have a psychologist note or even anything where you can say, listen, I'm going through this, so just bear with me, you know, sort of deal. So if you're interested in getting involved in that, sharing your little testimony in that, let me know. But otherwise, I'll see you guys next Sunday.